stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. That takes us to public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment for today?
Chair Lavanino, we have no request for public comment in Santa Maria or online.
Okay, and that was for items not on today's agenda.
Correct.
Okay. So let's do the approval of the consent calendar before we go to closed session so that we can make sure we have everybody in attendance.
Chair Lavanino, before we go to closed session, the board needs to consider consent calendar. I need to make a government code announcement on item 5E. Prior to the board acting on item 5E in accordance with government code section 54953, subdivision C3, the executive director's salary shall be summarized verbally. The recommended action includes a 3% increase effective July 1st, pay period 2024 through 13, which result in the change to the annual salary from $257,990 to approximately $265,730.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any request from the public besides Mr. Moss on 5C if they want to pull anything off the agenda?
I'm only aware of it, Mr. Moss's.
And then are any directors wish to pull any items from the consent calendar? None up here. I'm assuming if anybody in Santa Barbara, go ahead and yell out. Otherwise, we will see if I can get a motion to approve everything except item 5C.
I'll move. We approve everything except 5C.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Director Patino. Second by
Williams.
Williams, Director Williams. All right. Roll call, please.
Can we have public comment on this?
Yes, we're going to have public comment on 5C. 5C was pulled. So
Okay.
this is all the rest of the items we're moving forward on. Unless there's a request to speak from the public on a specific item.
I believe there is. Oh, 5C. Okay, thank you.
5C.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to a roll call vote. Director Williams.
Aye.
Capps.
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye.
Nelson. Aye. Hernandez.
Aye.
Patino.
Aye.
Richards.
Yes.
Clark.
Aye.
Rouse.
Aye.
And Chair Lavanino.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay. Now we're going to take up 5C. Madam Clerk, can you please read 5C into the record?
Item 5C, options for programming federal carbon reduction program funding. Approved programming of $3.952 million of federal carbon reduction program funding for Cabrillo Boulevard Rail, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Project, and increase $2 million of Regional Surface Transportation Program Highway 101 reserve funding to cities and the County of Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And we have one public comment for Mr. Steve Moss.
Go ahead, Mr. Moss.
Thanks. Okay. Can you hear me? Is it working? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good morning, Chair Lavignino and SBCAG board members. I'm Steve Moss, Grants and Compliance Manager at the Santa Barbara Metropolitan Transit District. I'm here today speaking for our General Manager, Jerry Estrada, who's not able to attend. I would like to clarify MTD's no vote at TTAC on item 5C, options for programming federal carbon reduction program funding. We were prepared to support whichever option was favored by TTAC, including option 4, which was selected. However, the discussion was truncated, and MTD's question regarding transit eligibility for the $2 million in RSTP funds was left unanswered. MTD had hoped to have acknowledgement at the TTAC meeting that South Coast jurisdictions could, at their discretion, use their RSTP distribution for local transit projects in coordination with the district. And like I said, that was not addressed in the motion. Also, given time for discussion, MTD would have requested that future funding from this program be distributed through a competitive call for projects. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from any of our directors?
This is Director Hartman. Could Director Kern just give us a little more background on this?
I'm going to defer to Sarkis Kachek of my staff. Thank you.
I don't think that's on Sarkis. There we go.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Lavignino, directors. Through the chair, trying not to go into the weeds on this one, but so we did present the item to TTAC a couple weeks ago and then present all the options. There was a motion on option 4, and then TTAC voted on option 4. And so then the committee proceeded with the item. But staff is committed to working with TTAC and the board after this cycle of carbon reduction funding and providing additional options to TTAC and the board once we have additional funding in the future. I can expand on the carbon reduction program if there's.
Why don't you answer the question? Can the funding be used for transit, and is it in the discretion of the local jurisdictions to use their funding for transit if they elect to do so?
Thank you. So with the federal carbon reduction program, this is a new program that was included in the federal bill. Transit is eligible as a project for this funding program. Really anything anything that helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions would be eligible. So the eligibility is included in the staff report, but transit would be eligible. And the jurisdictions can use the funding for the local surface transportation funding for transit as well.
Okay. So the concern was it just wasn't spelled out in the motion?
Yes.
Okay. So, Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lavignino. Is ATP projects available as well?
Yes, those are, so through the chair, Director Nelson, active transportation projects are eligible.
Excellent, thank you.
Any questions? More questions from Santa Barbara? Or Alice?
I move that we approve item 5C.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Patino, second by Director Nelson. Roll call, please.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Capps?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Hernandez?
Aye.
Patino?
Aye.
Richards?
Yes.
Clark?
Aye.
Rouse?
Aye.
And Lavanino.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay, let's do a little agenda management here. So I was thinking, since we have Caltrans here, and I don't know if anybody else in staff here, we just as soon, we're kind of cruising through this. Why don't we go ahead and do items 6, 7, and 8, and then we'll go to closed session, if that makes sense for everybody.
Makes sense to me.
Okay, let's go to item 6 then. Madam Clerk?
Item 6, Transportation Demand Management Annual Report. Receive presentation on SBCAG's Transportation Demand Management Program.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, my name is Aaron Bonfilio, the director of the new Multimodal Programs Division at SBCAG. And today we're going to be presenting our Transportation Demand Management Annual Report for 2023. And with me today is Peter Williamson from SBCAG, who will be presenting along with me. And we have a presentation on this program and what Transportation Demand Management is generally, or TDM, as you'll hear. And before I hand it off to Peter, I'm going to go talk briefly about what TDM is and what we mean when we say it, and give you a brief overview of the upcoming presentation. Yep. It's on. Thank you, Sarkis. So what is TDM, or Transportation Demand Management? Well, in a nutshell, it is the use of strategies to maximize efficiency of our transportation network, to reduce congestion on our roadways, and to both lower emissions, but also to lower cost and to save money on the infrastructure that we've invested in. So how do we do this? Well, it's all about trips, and quite simply, it's about reducing trips, consolidating trips, and potentially shifting trips when able. Transportation demand management is not about the reduction of mobility or accessibility. Frankly, it's the encouragement and better use of the available resources out there so we can increase it. Today's report will cover the strategies that SBCAG has partaken in over the past year, as well as how we compare to prior periods, including before the pandemic. And we'll take a look at how commutes and patterns have shifted. But also we'll zoom in on a couple of very specific use cases. Some of the large employers in our county, some of the municipalities that have implemented TDM strategies or TDM programs. And then finally, some upcoming next steps and actions that we'll be taking as we move forward over the next couple of years. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Peter.
Thank you, Aaron. Good morning, Chair Lavanino, SBCAG Board. Probably wondering what rock this SBCAG member crawled out from under. I'm here to share about our visible countywide outreach efforts to encourage sustainable transportation that reduce vehicle miles traveled, or refer to that as VMT. And my name is Peter Williamson. I'm a program coordinator at SBCAG. I have a transportation demand management certified professional certification and 10 years of direct experience, so I guess you can believe what I say. Let's time out for a quick program definition before taking the deep dive. Much of what I'll talk about today is VMT related to the daily commute. And with this in mind, I want to define SBCAG's Smart Ride program. It's our toolbox with all of the things we use to reduce the daily A to B VMT. And this means employer outreach, commuter surveys, trip logging, and more. Nice, it's working. All right, so it's our mission to shift drive alone behavior to reduce VMT, and to that end, we'll deploy a variety of direct engagement tools. And we need to go back one. There we go. Engagement tools. Yes, like the newsletters, the events, and 2023 marked a significant increase in our contact database with a contact count now closing on more like 15,000 since this slide. Our 60 events are primarily comprised of bike month activities, the new hire orientations we do with county employees working in this building actually, and e-bike demonstrations. The 25% conversion that we show here, that's a little new. So if this presentation is outreach and I hand out a survey to our board and 5 members fill it out and like, what a stellar presentation, then the 5 members would be a conversion to share what that is. And do what I do at the end of the day. I'll present a lot of numbers here, but think about the small wins, a Marburg employee and an Allen Hancock employee replacing their daily drive for the daily fresh air pedal to work thanks to events like the Easy Bike Project did in 2023. So if SmartRide is the commuter brand, smartride.org is the software supporting most program efforts. This software offers a countywide resource for comparing travel options and logging trips for both employer and regional rewards. Trip logging is voluntary and primarily represents commuters using alternative transportation to workplaces with a commuter incentive like Sansum Clinic, City of Goleta, Dignity Health here in Santa Maria, and Cottage Health. This trip logging graph shows the classic COVID decline and climb, similar to what TDM activities are looking like nationwide. Starting in 2022, we added monthly giveaways to encourage trip logging from the general Santa Barbara community. And this gives us an opportunity to interview our winners, generating a database of meaningful quotes, like this one from a City of Goleta employee. Said, I started biking out of necessity, but now I bike whenever I can because my body and mind feel great from the exercise and fresh air. So if you want to be healthy, like Samantha, then you should bike more often, of course, is the premise. All right, let's take a closer look at 2019 and 2023 Smart Ride impacts. In 2019, a significant number of trips were generated by employers like Gigavac, Sansum, Santa Barbara City College, and Sonos, roughly 20,000 trips each to be exact. And with the transition to remote work, many of our employers adjusted their TDM program, including eliminating positions that actually manage the parking or the trip reduction programs. So an employer like Sonos is mostly remote now, and you have City College who's just realizing the parking impacts again, right, after this amount of time. So there's no employer incentive for logging telework days, although we do recognize it with our regional monthly giveaways. And as we're all aware, the adoption of telework post-COVID, net positive, but it's not recognized with this trip logging tool. But I do want to point out with this slide another thing, which is in 2019, Cottage Health makes up 45% of all trips logged. And in 2023, that's 78% Cottage makes up of trips logged. And speaking of Cottage, I like to ask myself, what if our workforce had continued to work through the pandemic? What would that have looked like? So let's take a closer look at Cottage Hospital, a point of continuity in trip logging since 2015. Aside from the City of Goleta's commuter incentive, Cottage offers one of the more generous programs, a $75 per month cash out. It's enough to get some people thinking and shifting behaviors. Gives us a picture of what supporting mode behavior can do, which is 15 million vehicle miles traveled prevented over, since 2015. While trip logging as a whole is down, you'll see here that the Cottage numbers, if you look at the 2019 and the 2023, are basically level. The next chart offers a little farther insight into this Cottage case study. The outer circle of this pie chart is our trips traveled, and the inner circle is the vehicle miles traveled. And so, if we look at this, and also it's worth noting that Cottage doesn't have an incentive for driving alone, so you don't see a drive alone represented in this mode wheel. Where carpool trips are making up around 40% of the trips logged, the VMT impact of those trips is closer to 60%. And that, of course, could suggest that we can focus on long-distance carpools and make a very big impact. So the smartride.org software offers a representation of people in our region taking advantage of alternative transportation options. And I now want to turn your attention to another SmartRide program tool, our Trip Reduction Plan Survey, which is my personal favorite of the toolkit. And here we found an opportunity to learn who drives alone, who's willing to use an alternative, and what it would take to move that needle. So we work with employers from all sectors throughout the county to collect responses over 1 week periods. Lompoc Valley Medical Center is one of the more recent employers to take advantage of this service. Debbie, head of the HR there, made us blush with this one. The commuter survey was a game changer, allowing us to hear from employees about their commute, adding valuable ideas to possibly decrease our parking challenges. So there's a lot of good stuff happening in these next two slides. I want to punch this over to Sam Furtner with the City of Santa Barbara to describe our partnership here and offer a granular perspective of this survey's output. Sam, can you zoom in with us?
Yeah, good morning, Peter, Chair Levanino, Board of Directors. Can you all hear me well? Okay, great. Sam Furtner, City of Santa Barbara. I'm the mobility coordinator working in active and alternative transportation planning and implementation. And I also run the city's work trip program, which is our trip reduction incentive program for city employees. This program's been around for over a decade, and we offer a robust suite of different commuter benefits for our city employees, ranging from subsidized long distance transit passes to employee carpool programs. Something that's come up recently in the city is a lot more focus on retention and the realities of housing costs in the South Coast and how that translates to where employees live. So relevant to this conversation, about 50% of City of Santa Barbara staff live outside of the limits of the City of Santa Barbara. So we see a lot of travel into the city to our places of employment here, which means that the focus on these trip reduction incentive programs is really important to keep employees happy with their commute and to keep options available for different commuter benefits for our employees. So we last did a commuter survey back in 2019. We had under 200 responses for our employee pool of about 1,500. And working with Peter and the traffic solutions team, we were able to launch another survey just a few weeks ago, actually, and we had about a 500-person response rate, which is enormous. And how that helps us is it helps us to understand the barriers for our employees to use active and alternative transportation modes. And Peter has been very instrumental in helping us understand the survey responses and walk through some of the relevant takeaways. Interestingly, something that we found in our survey responses is that, generally speaking, the City of Santa Barbara staff undervalue the cost of their commute significantly. On average, we had employees reporting that their commute cost around $50 a week. And according to other assessment tools through AAA, that true cost is more in the $150 per week realm. So pretty indicative of people undervaluing the amount of money and time they're spending on their commute. These TDM surveys are very beneficial for us to understand where employees are coming from and what different options we may have to help really move the needle about different transportation modes that our employees use. So I just wanted to weigh in. I'm grateful for the opportunity to plug Smart Ride and everything that Traffic Solutions does. Peter's team has been great and a good support for the City of Santa Barbara. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Wonderful work there. Always a pleasure to hear your voice. All right, so let's zoom out from that to look at a little bit of a regional perspective. So now we're closer to actually 2,600 regional responses, so there's an update since. But as you can see, there's a 76% survey-wide drive-alone rate, which is pretty similar to the travel trends study that our planning division presented to you recently. The 66% potential that you see here is not part of that travel trends, and that represents those using alternative transportation combined with those driving alone that are willing to use alternative modes. So if we pay attention to what respondents are saying, we have a real opportunity to reduce VMTs, and I just want to be clear on that. This tool has helped us identify 831 people driving alone, willing to use alternative transportation that we can directly contact to help shift their behavior. And you can allow me to nerd out on this data a little farther by explaining average vehicle ridership, AVR, and also this adjusted VMT. The 1.34 here is a person-to-car ratio arriving at surveyed work sites. Employers with a drive-alone culture will have a number like 1.2. Exceptional employers will land somewhere close to a 2. And interesting to note that UCSB students, as well as SBCAG staff, thanks to our telework culture, are closer to the number 8. So if we apply the concept of AVR to vehicle miles traveled, we have an average miles traveled as a region, 18.7 from this survey data, which drops to 13.63 thanks to people teleworking, taking the bus, carpooling, or biking. This type of metric can help employers measure VMT compliance with city or state mandates, for example. So, what are people saying when they take this survey? Here's one quote. I drive a gas hog and I have to borrow from my siblings just to get to work. Sometimes I take the bus to save, but a full price pass is very expensive. I request that the employer subsidize. So employers like Oxford Instruments Asylum Research in Goleta, we'll just say OIAR, pictured here, are taking similar feedback to inform their decision making. OIAR launched a $2 a day commuter incentive last week after reviewing their commuter survey feedback. And OIAR is also testing new territory offering surge incentives for Bike to Work Day and Earth Day. In other words, carpool on Earth Day, get $20. So you can join me in thanking OIAR and other employers for implementing based on the feedback of their employees. And I didn't mention, you're welcome to interrupt me at any time, and I can answer questions as we go or at the end. I'm happy with that. All right, and with that, a transition to Vanpool. Vanpool, for those that don't follow this closely, 5 to 15 commuters sharing a leased vehicle, van or SUV to and from work. The driver is a volunteer, which differentiates this from a shuttle. A review of the National Transit Database numbers shows that vanpooling is the most cost-efficient transit option. Our Vanpool program's focus with Quick Start has been getting people going. So if you know Vanpools, you know that these are tight groups. Often we refer to them, they refer to themselves as families, right? that come with all the problems of families, by the way, to some degree. So we pay 50% of the first month, 25% of the second month, and offer a $100 rider rebate to new riders after the third month is completed. And as we explore ways to increase adoption of van pooling in Santa Barbara County, we want to provide you with the current state of activities. So CalVans, strong ag van pool presence in the region, that accounts for that fluctuation of 30 to 175 seasonal, right? And a handful of other commuter vans traveling to UCSB, Cottage Health, Foothill Labor Solutions, the Lompoc Prison, the Vandenberg Space Force Base. Other regions in California offer an average of a $600 a month lease towards public van pools and a more longer term model. So we're monitoring trends. We're negotiating with the vendors that serve our county right now. We know van pools are a good bang for the buck, and so we'll hear more about that. You'll hear more about that soon, I'm sure. All right, let's pivot to what this division has long been known for, which is Bike Month. Us locals call it Cyclemania, and you've seen a lot about that in Margie's Friday updates, hopefully. Everybody's reading those. Quick time out for one more fun commuter survey analysis where people's general commute satisfaction by mode hovers in the 45 to 60% range. People that are biking to work are closer to 90% satisfied with their commute as a whole so far. So I think that's why it's fun to celebrate biking every May. We had a good number of events last year, 2023, in comparison to 15 in 2022. The asterisk here means that we're not counting the Santa Ynez Valley Open Streets attendees. The biggest output from the 2023 efforts are the number of actions taken by participants, such as doing a safety pledge, giving us feedback about our regional bike map, participating in an educational opportunity. So moving forward, we're looking at strengthening our understanding of how this campaign shifts behavior, gets new people biking. So before wrapping this up, I want to offer a quick perspective of other programs we support with minimal staff time. The Emergency Ride Home, top left here, covers those what-ifs people often consider before trying an alternative. So you can get an Uber, Lyft, rental car if you have unexpected overtime, you get a flat tire, and more. And moving over to the right there, we partner with the National Bike Index and bike shops to encourage people that purchase their new bikes to register it. They're 4 times more likely to recover that bike. But most importantly, we get some information for folks at a great behavior moment. Hey, you bought a new bike. You want to try biking that thing to work? So we offer 10 free bus rides, also bottom left here, as part of the Tri-Transit program. I've seen a large number of new county employees actually taking advantage of this. I'm actually really curious if the one that I was thinking of the other day, who takes the 10 to the SMART system to this very building, is continuing to do so. But we often see that trend. They, take their free 10 rides and hey, this works out pretty well for me. And finally, we offer the always popular Santa Barbara Car Free partnership with LoSan. That's offering car-free visitors and locals to take advantage of a 20% discount on the Amtrak Pacific Surfliner. And I know you're probably thinking, I'm going to go to San Diego later. It's sbcarfree.org. Punch that in. All right, so what's next for us? We invite you to the Cyclemania 2024 Mayor's Ride in Carpinteria on Friday, May 17th at 9:30 a.m. Also, I believe at our next board meeting, the county is hosting a Bike to Work Day event really close to the location in Santa Barbara, so you can go down and take a peek at that. Maybe bike that day, yeah. So thanks to 41 partnerships, everyone will find an excuse to ride this May, complete with a Rad Power Bike sponsored chance to win an electric cargo bike. And we're finishing development of a behavior change model for commuters driving the 101 corridor from Ventura County. This campaign guides participants in establishing systems like where are you going to hide your car keys? How will you reward yourself when you take the bus or bike? Who will pay? Who will you pay a penalty in your family if you don't do the bus the days you say you're going to do it? So after achieving regular participation in 30 days, you unlock another 60 days. These sorts of things. So we'll model something like this for each mode, leading up to a potential AM commuter train service in the fall. And we also, next point down, survey our employees about their commuter resources in addition to the survey data that you saw. So these outputs are useful in creating benchmarks, and we're developing an employer Smart Ride scorecard that we hope to share in a future report. And then on Earth Day, you can ride most systems in Santa Barbara County, including Santa Maria Regional Transit here, for free. And we want to continue to work with our transit operators, partners, to unify these types of promotions and also work on universal basic mobility models for our region. And most importantly for this report, we welcome your feedback for the adoption of key performance measures, what caught your interests here, what might we consider including in the future, what you didn't like. So let's take a deep breath first, focus on one thing. Spring is here, bikes are in bloom, and we will see you in the bike lane. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions, Supervisor Nelson.
Yes, thank you,
Director.
Chair Lavanino. Just curious, what are the top employers that are utilizing carpooling programs in the county?
Yeah, great question. As I kind of mentioned, Cottage Health is certainly the top user of the software. I want to say we've enrolled kind of through a process of like, oh, what are you offering your commuters and this sort of thing, close to like 35 to 40 employers. So a good handful paying attention to these programs and starting to get more involved with like the Smart Ride platform. Like the city doesn't have, they have a lot of great commuter benefits. The city of Santa Barbara have a lot of great commuter benefits, but it's not linked to the Smart Ride platform. So yeah, does that kind of answer the question? I guess, yeah, the city, UCSB is obviously a big player in this arena.
So where's the Chumash actually fit in this?
Yeah, great question. Cold calls that don't get answered right now, but we want to get somebody. So if you have a great contact over there, I think that's one of the points.
I would just imagine they're probably the largest carpool, alternative transportation employer, definitely in the county, maybe anywhere, with their buses for
with their existing.
Yeah,
program.
their existing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I've heard rumors about some potential transit partnerships. I don't know if we're.
I don't know. It's amazing that they're doing that without all these programs. It's really impressive that they've taken the lead on that. And I also think that probably the second largest in our county probably is the Calvans program. So, North County leading the way again on carpooling. On this, a lot of these programs seem very, I always like to say South Coast centric. I think, as we look at this in the future, we should be trying to find ways, again, more with the employers, and I think that's where the incentives come, is really encouraging them to work with their employees. Maybe some of the South County employers can be as aggressive as Chumash are, or many of our agricultural farms are, with making sure that their employees are carpooling.
Yeah, Marion Medical Center is another one in North County that we do have involved in the Smart Ride platform, so that is represented. And there's a lot of, for the Bike Month coming up, more events than we've ever seen for Cyclemania happening in Santa Maria.
And I guess my last question is, what are we budgeting? What are we spending on these programs as far as SBCAG is concerned?
We included that in our presentation 2 months ago. I'm guessing about $260,000 per year for staff to support these services, mostly supported out of our SAFE program, the Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies, which is an allowable expense for that. But we also have Measure A dollars, both North and South Measure A funding to support traffic multimodal division.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Director Infante.
Thank you very much. I'd like to follow on to Mr. Nelson's comments for a couple of things. Being from Solvang, we have this little community, and we don't get any of this. We have the San Ynez Valley Transit, which last council meeting we just approved a price raise, a price increase. You mentioned things like van pools and stuff like that. I need to have, we have a problem in the city, and being a small little city, a lot of our employees and the businesses come out of Lompoc or Santa Maria and commute. I'd like to see how we get involved with van pools, how we increase maybe the San Ynez Valley Transit, or partner with the Chumash, because they have a big black bus that comes through town all the time, coming from Lompoc and Santa Maria primarily, I believe, going through to the casino. It's not full. So do you have any pull at all? I mean, unanswered phone calls, I think, is what I just heard. I do know a couple of the people at Chumash, so maybe we can do something, but I need some help. I would like to find a way that our business, the employees of our businesses in town, have a better method of transportation from wherever they live into the city. Help.
Yeah, great question. Well, one thing we've recently done is Cottage has the Cottage Health and the Cottage Hospital right in pretty close to Solvang.
Right.
And so we started to do employer outreach as part of their health fair, which hasn't been done historically. So that's a good presence. I also had a connection with the Forest Service in Solvang, so that's another kind of employer outreach. We're trying to figure out how we can get employers' interest. Helps like a lot with the carpools and the van pools, of course, because we need to get that future family together. They don't know they want to be family yet, and so we need to have that kind of direct connection for that type of thing. I think the transit question, I think there's more to that. I'm not sure if Aaron wants to speak to that a little bit, or Margie.
Sure. Through the chair, Director Infante. So in the city of Solvang, the Solvang Buellton Transit System, the SYVT, is very effective actually, and from a passenger per hour standpoint and cost per passenger standpoint is actually one of the most efficient systems in the county. But that said, there's always room for growth. The challenge I think we've had is that the demand and the geographic density of the passengers coming to and from the area is always a challenge. And I will just add, for the case of the Chumash bus system, they also provide transportation to people coming to and from the resort as well, which helps pay for those services. In fact, it's free to the people who ride the bus, but there's a charge that each passenger then gets a set of cash incentives when they go to the casino, which then turns and pays for the services, which is great. You know, my colleagues in Ventura County who helped coordinate some of the staging of those buses in Ventura County, because they come from as far south as Simi Valley into the Chumash Resort, it's a good service, very efficient, but also very lucrative in the sense that when people do take that bus, and in addition to the employees, it helps provide that service. But what I will say with regard to SYVT and all of the transit systems here in this county is one of the things we're looking at in the upcoming grant cycle for the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, that's TIRCIP, as we like to call it. It's this summer. We're submitting a grant application that's going to look at, that's going to attempt to try and regionalize some of the fare systems in this county. In particular, SYVT does not yet have what's contactless or open loop payments. SMART is starting to roll that out here in Santa Maria. Santa Barbara has already done that. Clean Air Express has done that here in the North County. And what we're trying to do is make sure that Guadalupe, Lompoc, San Ynez, that all of the various systems have that same technology. And then with that, we'll integrate those systems, provide benefits through that back end, and make sure that we're coordinated from not just a fare standpoint, but also from a planning standpoint. And then that same system can eventually pipe data back into that program you saw earlier, the Smart Ride, so we can kind of quantify some of those things. But with regard to working with the large businesses, and locally with the chamber, frankly, that's something that we need to do. And when we do it, we want to be able to measure it. We have a set of KPI performance measures that we'll be bringing back to you, so you can actually see that impact, the VMT impact. So, we would love to work with you in your jurisdiction and find out what are some of those touch points that you'd like us to hit on. In particular, the large employers, the chamber, contacts at the Chumash, et cetera.
If you were to coordinate all of these transportation programs, can you give me a timeline?
Well, if we're successful with this grant, the anticipated obligation period to make sure that those funds are spent would be within a 3-year period, and probably most likely that new system would be procured and back out on the street in about 4 years from this summer's award, if we're so lucky.
If you're so lucky. So tomorrow I'm addressing the Economic Development meeting in Solvang and talking about this stuff. And one of the biggest restrictions to economic development for us is employees can't afford to live in Solvang. So they have to live someplace else, hence we get back into this transport issue, or transportation issue. And I'm looking for solutions that the city can support, that we can work on. I mean, this is a chamber event that I'm going to tomorrow, but it's about the city. Help. Send me information. You guys all have my email. Please let me know what I can do. Van pool ideas, I'll take anything to get started.
Certainly.
That's what I'm asking.
And through the chair, I'd just like to echo Supervisor Nelson's comments about the van pool program. It is one of the most cost-effective options out there.
Yeah.
And so we'd certainly like to follow up with you about that.
Thank you very much.
Santa Barbara.
This is Director Hartman. I have a question, or first a comment, if I may. And the first thing is, I think this was a tremendous report, and I think it reflects the reorganization with the multimodal division. And we're seeing, not just feel good, but really trying to be more rigorous in collecting data and using that to develop policies that we can then measure and give us feedback. So I'm hugely excited about that. My question has to do with all the new housing that we're building and some of the new developments, and whether there's a lot of discussion right now about whether we'll use level of service in any way, or whether that's a barrier to mitigating traffic impacts, whether that's a barrier to housing. I would like to know how we can encourage the developers of these new residential areas to engage in these kinds of traffic management programs.
Yeah, good question. So to answer a little bit, we have one developer we've worked with in a similar way to how we work with employers. That would be the Tobes group. So when they're putting in development, we'll go and consult them on like what kind of actions they could take to get the word out about the carpool matching system or the services available, prepare resources for those residential locations. We have kind of what I mentioned, that kind of scoring thing. There's a piece of that we've created in the past for developers that you kind of score a development and like things in TDM that would be relevant for those locations. So there's not a lot of developer outreach happening right now, but it's something I've done a lot in the past in SLO County. So I don't know if Aaron wants to comment on that as well.
I would just like to say we would be really interested in that, and whatever incentives or ways to induce that behavior, we'd be really eager to learn more. So hope you'll put that in your to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be on the ground with development before it starts, especially when it comes to the infrastructure, like showering facilities. And some of these things are basic to most developments going in now, which is nice. But some of the programmatic things, a developer can set the runway for us and help us get started with whoever ends up moving into a location.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful if if you could give us some resources, some white paper, something, so that we can get that to developers. They'll be coming in for rezones, and we want to make that expectation clear from the start.
Yeah, Margie Director Kern just mentioned to me, like the city of Goleta actually has some requirements. So that jogged my memory. We have like a development that's going in that we've been advising for some time. So they say the developer, like in our survey data, we had that adjusted vehicle miles traveled. So the developer that we're talking about here is required to show some compliance. And they're saying, hey, we want to do programmatic stuff to reach that, not the traditional CEQA strategies. And so that's kind of been an ongoing process, but it's something that we have been a part of that conversation the whole time. So we're happy to play that role for any new developers going in. And I think the City of Goleta's model ensures that conversation. Excited to see where that goes. Hopefully it results in some meaningful programming.
Thank you.
Director Nelson?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Lavignon. Just to speak to some of these housing projects that are going on, especially those with the ASICS grant, that the Affordable Housing Sustainability Communities Act. Most of these grants are partnering with CalVans, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in my update this month. But we're taking in quite a bit of money to create families, and many of these affordable housing projects, including the one that's going to go into Guadalupe. But we are seeing early on that there's not a lot of uptake in the residents in these projects that actually want to start families. And so, it's going to be an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, the voluntary nature of these programs can be a challenge. And often we found that, if you find that champion at a work site or a development that is really behind this, that's more effective than a mandate to some degree at the end of the day.
Director Hernandez?
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. You mentioned 60 events for outreach. I'm an avid cyclist in Guadalupe. I love to encourage others. Any opportunity for 2025 to have some outreach engagement in North County?
Yeah, actually for 2024, I think it's the Guadalupe Cafe is playing role as one of our Bike There locations. So anytime May 1st through 31st, you could go to the Guadalupe Cafe, get a free seed packet for biking there, worth the chance to win the Rad Wagon. So that's cool to have a presence in Guadalupe. Also in Solvang, the Book Loft, and the Draftsman Aleworks.
Any flyers that you can send our way?
Yeah, of course.
Chair. I have a question about is there other questions in Santa Barbara?
Yes, please. But if you go ahead,
Okay.
Chair, if you'd like.
No, go for
Okay,
it.
thanks. Thank you. I just wanted to, this is Director Capps, I just wanted to double down on what Director Hartman said is, I think oftentimes when there's outreach happening, those of us right here, we do outreach all day long. So if we can just be in on the process, especially, mentioning developers, that's literally what we've been doing for the last year. So we would love to just be, included in plans and help you get those numbers up and engage more companies and more entities. So that's just a point number one I wanted to double down on. Two, a question, have you segmented out or looked at our folks, our government employees, how municipalities are doing, how the county's doing? I just firmly believe we should lead by example on initiatives like this.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment for leading by example. It's something we're certainly looking at SBCAG as well, which we recently just did our own internal commuter survey. The county has participated in that process. The majority of the responses that I covered today were actually county responses, as well as City of Carpinteria. I think we have City of Goleta on deck, and kind of poking City of Buellton. So it'd be nice to get the North County cities implementing a similar process, and then we can benchmark, see where everybody's at. A little friendly competition, like, oh, I want to get closer to that number. It drives people, so we're into that.
So that hasn't
So
been
how
part.
is the county doing?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Has that been part of the data so far?
Yeah. So the City of Carpinteria and the county were included in what you saw. I don't think SBCAG's results were in there, but yeah, generally, the South Coast by the fall, we'll be completely covered, and we'll share that report card, right? So then with that report card, you'd have an opportunity to see what the other cities land at number-wise. So you can be like, oh, and that number's this, and then we're that.
Thank you.
Chair Lagavino?
Sure.
Yeah, Director Rouse here. So first of all, I'm glad to hear about the van pooling being the most efficient. I know that the school district has mentioned a great interest in being involved in that with their problem trying to house teachers as well. But I had a question that kind of dates back to my origins in business and the first time I met who is now Assemblymember Hart when he was the TDM guy, maybe the original one. And that was how accurate today is our information regarding employer data? Because at the time, I think this was in the early 80s, Director Hart came to us and we had a very arduous, analog way of talking about where our employees lived, what time they came to work, how they got there, when they left. And I had a business that was open 14 hours a day with 2 shifts, 7 days a week, so with 55 employees. So it was a real pain to do that. However, it was the last time I was asked as an employer until I left.
Mr. Chairperson, we have a problem with the audio that the online cannot hear Santa Barbara.
Okay.
Lucky
Can
you.
we, Director, you had me on the edge of my seat, but.
Sorry.
all right.
Sorry. I didn't want anybody to miss what
Okay,
what was being said.
so do we want to take a short break till we get it fixed, or?
Terry, do we?
This happened Tuesday at City Hall. It's me. It's got to be
Hold
me.
on.
Okay.
I've got, I know where our IT people are, just a second.
Yeah, we couldn't start the meeting for 15 minutes because our brand new system
employees.
School districts is where that left off.
Okay,
for
thank
the
you.
Zoom land.
So anyway, the superintendents of the school district are
Squelch.
interested in van pooling because of the dearth of housing for their teachers. So that's a bit of, like I said, excited to hear about it being the most efficient. But I was going back with a small history lesson about when TDM started, and that's how I met now Assemblymember Hart, because we had to fill out information to where our employees came from, how they got there, what time they worked, what time they went home, and all the various things. Painful but accurate information. My question for TDM now is, how accurate is the employer information today? And the reason why I ask this with a somewhat cynical tone is only because I was in business for almost 40 years, and I was asked one time, and other times there was an assumption of what I had going on and what I didn't. And I read a couple reports because I was also involved in the downtown parking system, which funded all of our alternative transportation programs in Santa Barbara at the time. And I was told I had 10 employees when I had 55. And I was wondering, because I kept saying, well, we take accurate information. I go, where are you getting it? Because you're not talking to me. And so my question would be, do we have accurate information, and how are we collecting that information?
Yeah, great question. And I just learned recently, I think about 31 years ago, Santa Barbara County did start with like an ordinance. So there was a requirement for employers to receive a certain response rate. So that's similar to like SCAG, the South Coast, Santa Monica. If you're an employer in Santa Monica, you have to get a certain percentage response to like the commuter survey I described today. It is a voluntary program. So like the county survey, for example, is a 25% response rate, which is about 1,000 responses. I think looking at the data in comparison to Replica and it lining up is somewhat of an indicator that it could be a little bit more accurate. Kind of, again, probably the most important output there is the 831 people driving alone willing to use an alternative that we can directly contact. So the accuracy of the data, it's not perfect. It wouldn't be SCAG quality, and those employers would be, I guess, paying to not have gotten that response rate.
And very good. And lastly, are UCSB and City College, are they spoken about anecdotally, or do we have accurate information? Because at the time, they were not included because they're state agencies and we had no control over them, and they had their own TDMs that they presented. So do we now have that integrated into our data, as in the city of Santa Barbara and of course in Goleta, those are our most significant traffic and housing demand users?
Yeah, City College, it would be nice to run a commuter survey with them. I think we're heading in that direction. It's established a good partnership recently, and UCSB does their own commuter survey with it's a statistically valid study, so it's actually more accurate than what we would do anyways. But we did connect it. They're running it right now, and it's connected to our commuter survey at the end. So there's an additional carrot to continue and offer your data to the region, which gives us the opportunity to be like, hey, look at all these people that might utilize the Clean Air Express, for example. Look at it as a region versus UCSB and how they use the data.
Thank you.
Okay. This item, if there's no other discussion, was there any public comment on this matter?
Chair Levine, I have no request for public comment.
Okay, then this is just to receive the presentation, so thank you very much. I don't think we need to vote on that. That takes us to item 6B. Madam Clerk?
Item 6B, Highway 101 Carpinteria to Santa Barbara. Receive a presentation on the Highway 101 Carpinteria to Santa Barbara project related to construction and pre-construction efforts for the mainline Highway 101 improvements and the associated parallel projects.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Lavinino and directors. Fred Luna, here to present, as indicated, an update on Highway 101. I think the focus today will be all the work that's been done in the last several months, and both on Highway 101 and the parallel projects that you've heard a lot about. Okay. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. Just have to wait, a little delay. This slide you've seen before. So this basically shows the entire corridor of all the segments of Highway 101. And the shaded box really indicates that those are all the projects we have either completed or funded under construction. So essentially about 9.5 miles of the total 11 miles. We did hear recently at one of our partnering sessions with the Granite Construction, the contractor, that essentially 50% of the work is done based on their forecast. And then it's trending upwards with all the projects that have been funded in recent years. So just gives you an indication of where we're at on progress in the corridor. Last year, I think I used the phrase that's at the bottom of this slide that the opportunity comes from the reward after we're given the reward from the SB1 funds was looking at what can we do with those funds. And so we're looking at that as an opportunity as the project team. And so when we talk about the project team, it's certainly expanded greatly since the early days of Highway 101. Early on, I think we think back is that there was a memorandum of understanding that was signed between Caltrans and SBCAG in 2015. And at that time, we were saying we need to share the responsibilities to deliver 101. And so that's gone to include a number of other consultants. So SBCAG hires consultants. We've agreed to split up the work. We've hired contractors. You've heard a lot about the construction management general contractor approach for Highway 101 and how we're going to use alternative project delivery. So there's contractors that are part of that pre-construction effort. And then with all the parallel projects and working with our local agency partners, they're all part of a larger team. Typically, when we have twice-a-year partnering sessions, we usually get about 60 people to attend from all sorts, including utility companies and local agencies, the contractor, all our consultants, and then the Caltrans team. So it's quite a large team that attends. And the way we were able to accomplish our milestones, I think, is in this slide. We're able to divide that up in tasks. We have a number of task teams that work under individual kind of focus components. You know, for instance, coastal permitting or right-of-way, utilities. So they're empowered to do the work. They work with those people, and then they, you know, when certain issues rise up, and then we get those actions done. So I think it's been working well for the last several years. On this slide, I just wanted to highlight some of the recent accomplishments since last year. We started work in the Montecito segment, so that was big news. The Highway 101 Montecito in the north segment, and then we have just recently completed the roundabouts at Olive Mill and San Isidro, and I think you'll hear today, Director Kern will probably announce that we're having an event, and you may have gotten an announcement on that on May 2nd for that. On Highway 101 Summerlin. So this was segment 4C. This was funded under Cycle 1. That is complete. We're going to plan a larger celebration event towards the end of 2024 when 4B and 4C are completed, and that'll fully build out the first 7 miles that were funded in 2018 with Senate Bill 1 funding. And then just other things that we've accomplished in the last year was getting the second segment of the Montecito area completed into construction, and funds were just recently voted in March to get that one completed. And then the Santa Barbara segment will go to the CTC, but the construction package has been delivered, and so we'll vote those funds. Those will be voted by the CTC in May, and then we're anticipating starting construction in August on that segment. And then the County of Santa Barbara and the City of Santa Barbara. So I talk about our work with our local agency partners. They've delivered on some of their parallel projects, and I have a couple slides to show you which of those are going to construction this year. So I talked a lot about the original Cycle 1 funding in 2018, and by the end of this year, the Highway 101 Padaro is that middle segment that'll complete the first 7 miles. And so this segment, what you see here is that we just recently in March completed our last main traffic shift for the entire corridor in those first 7 miles. So that means that right here you're seeing that they're preparing for the construction paving, the concrete paving in the northbound direction. And this is near, just south of the community of Summerlin. And so, yeah, so this was This was done in March, and essentially now the only thing left that they need to do in those remaining 4 miles is working in the median, constructing the median barrier, and doing the final remaining work anticipated around November or December of this year for completing this segment. And that'll open up HOV lanes for the first 7 miles of Highway 101. This just 2 slides just give you a little bit more of an indication of some of the work that's going on that last initial funded 7-mile segment. So you can see that from the ground view, looking north on the slide on the left is preparing the pavement for the concrete paving. And then on the right, just beyond between Santa Claus Lane and North Padaro is we have 2 creek bridges that are there, Toro Creek and Arroyo Paradon, and those are the bridge construction that's going on in that area. So you've seen a lot of numbers today. I'm just going to give you a few more for Highway 101. And I just thought that this might be interesting, that you would see, like, what does it take to build 7 miles of construction on Highway 101? So this picture, even though it's near San Isidro, it's representative of work that's being done to install or drive piles. And so the operation that's going on here is that there's steel piles being driven. They'll support a ramp reconstruction, and then we'll be able to widen the freeway. So this is typical of work that's gone on throughout the first 7 miles of the project. Adding retaining walls, and those are supported by piles. They're either made of steel or concrete. They're either driven or cast, and when they're driven, we work closely with the community on the noise. Those are dependent on the soil conditions and such. They're used for sound walls, retaining walls, and overhead signs. And so all of that is measured if in your contract items in feet. And so what would it take to, how many feet of piles were used for the first 7 miles? 64,000 lineal feet of piles were used in this corridor. And I just said, well, if you laid those end to end, that would equal about 12 miles, which is the full length of the corridor. So just something to think about. This, another key component of almost everything that we do that's structural is reinforcing steel. And so what you see here is workers working on one of our representative and very typical barriers that we use for concrete barriers that is used on the South Coast. It's the concrete barrier with the wooden beam look. And so you can see the amount of reinforcing steel that's needed to go into the concrete barrier, but it's also used in our bridges, in our box culverts, sound walls, and other foundations for other types of structures. And all of that is measured by weight. And so we've used 2.4 million pounds of bar reinforcing steel, which equals about 1,200 tons. So that's the equivalent of 8 blue whales or 200 elephants, or you can just think of that. So. And just the last thing I wanted to point out was we talked a lot about CRCP, or continuously reinforced concrete pavement. It was something new to this district, something new to this region, but it was promoted early on in the planning phases as a way to create a long-lasting maintenance, low maintenance required, and then reduce the noise in the corridor. So it was unknown whether we would be able to do sound walls in all areas of the community, and we did find that out. And so, but this solution actually helps reduce noise throughout the whole corridor and has a broader effect. And so all of that is measured by the volume. Here you can see the apparatus that's used to put the concrete on the deck. There's steel, that's a steel bed that's laid first, and then the concrete paving is put on over this. It's a special mix with the concrete batch plant that's located right there near Summerlin, and so that comes right there and reduces the haul for all of that. And so the way I was thinking about this was that in the first 7 miles, we used about 140,000 cubic yards. And so that picture of the concrete blocks, we've all kind of seen those in construction, maybe if you've done something in your backyard or retaining wall or such. If each of those blocks was like a cubic yard, like 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, and you laid them across a football field, you'd have to stack them up 65 feet high in order to represent all the concrete that's been used in those first 7 miles. And the last few slides focus on some of the related parallel projects that have reached some recent accomplishments. So this is a picture of the Olive Mill Roundabout. It's a time lapse taken from the Montecito Inn, and I have another one that was taken of the Olive Mill Roundabout from a drone that Caltrans flies regularly over the corridor. And you can see here all the plantings in. This was the first of the 2 roundabouts that was completed. The San Ysidro's still finishing up some last minute details, but this one's essentially all done. It's operating and providing that benefit that we all anticipated for the traffic operations at this location. And then the next slide is the San Ysidro roundabout. So this is the second of the 2 roundabouts that were built along North Jameson on the north side of the freeway. They were built as one construction contract with Caltrans managing that and Granite Construction. So they were part of our CMGC process. In this particular case, you can see that bridge that's going over towards the beach. I can't point with this, but to the south or to the ocean side, and where the Rosewood Inn is, that was closed for a period of time. That helped us reduce the construction time of this whole area and get this roundabout in and completed. You'll see it if you haven't been by before, but if you attend the event, this roundabout has concrete paving, so it made it a lot more difficult to construct. And then we have some of the features that represent the semi-rural nature of the Montecito area. And the last 2 slides, just want to mention and give kudos to our partners at the county and the County of Santa Barbara and the city. So the county is close to, they've already advertised for construction at a project that was funded in our first cycle of Senate Bill 1 on Wallace Avenue. So that's the one on the top left. So we prepared a rendering to help convey what that would look like. And this required a lot of close coordination with our project in the Summerlin segment at this particular intersection. It's heavily used by beachgoers. It provides access to Lookout Park in that area. And that'll be going out to construction fairly soon, along with the one on the bottom left. That's on the north side of Summerlin in Villa Real. And that'll help improve coastal access from I guess that would be the eastern side of Summerlin down to Loon Point. And then on the right, that's Santa Claus Lane streetscape. You've heard about that at board meetings, but this is phase 1 that was funded, and it'll be going to construction later this summer. And then in the city of Santa Barbara, we have 2 projects that we want to highlight. The Los Patos Cabrillo Roundabout. So this was a mitigation project that came out of the 2017 Environmental Impact Report that Caltrans had done to identified about 7 local projects that needed to have improvements done for traffic mitigation. And a roundabout will replace an existing intersection there. The city of Santa Barbara is the lead on that. Its construction has started. It will be completed and done before a majority of the work at the Cabrillo interchange gets started. So that'll be in place and will be helpful for traffic operations. Similarly, a little bit north of that is the Milpas corridor. So working with the city of Santa Barbara, they have a project that will be going out this summer and starting work. And that was also a mitigation project to make some improvements on Milpas to ensure that traffic's not backing off the Milpas southbound off-ramp there. And I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Santa Barbara, questions? All right, I have one. It's just curious, so since we're already picking an August start time, I'm assuming we're fairly confident with the CTC full funding in May and June. That's fingers crossed, I'm assuming.
It's actually a year from now.
Okay.
So the application is due at the end of this calendar year, and then we'll know in 2025.
So that's, oh, 2025.
Whether we
Okay.
get the full funding for the last segment.
Okay.
I think you might have been referring to the one that's going to construction in August. Yeah, the meeting at the CTC hasn't happened yet, so we still have to wait for the funds to be voted. For all indications are that that's not going to be an issue.
Okay.
You know, yeah. So.
And then, so once that's 7 miles, the southern 7 miles, does that count any Ventura County mileage, or is that?
It does not.
Okay.
So you would add those 7 miles to what was done under that Phase 2 project that completed 2 miles in Santa Barbara and 4 miles in Ventura County. Yeah.
So now we're looking at 11 miles on the south end.
Exactly.
So if you're coming, heading north from Ventura, where's your first choke point now once this is completed?
If you're coming north, it's just outside the city of Carpinteria. It tapers down just beyond Santa Monica currently. And then when the 2 remaining segments that I mentioned today are open, then it'll
that
go
goes all the way to
through
where?
Sheffield.
To Sheffield.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Great. Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lavigno. Real quick, just, looking at all these parallel projects and mitigation projects, do we have a number on the price tag of all these projects ultimately? The added, besides just the widening, right?
Yeah, we can get that. We can get that for you. I do know that in cycle 1, we received about $30 million for projects that were associated with segments A, B, and C. And then there are other projects then that we're funding with local funds. So that was from Senate Bill 1. And then there's projects that are using RSTP, but we can get that number for you.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to take a look at that, because the widening obviously became much wider in projects.
Broader.
Broader, absolutely. And so I think it's good to look at it because it has had a positive benefit on the South Coast because they've been able to kind of latch on to the the movement of making sure the 101 was widened, but making sure that these parallel projects were necessary for some of the impacts. But it obviously added a lot to the costs, and so it'd be good to see what those numbers look like and those community benefits that were reached. And so I think I like to see what that total number was, not only from Measure A, but from the regional dollars as well as local dollars that have gone into those projects as we plug along. Thank you.
Certainly.
All right, so this was just a receive and file. Thank you very much, Fred. Appreciate it. Is there any public comment on this matter?
Chair Lavigno, there's no public comment.
Okay, great. That takes us to our Executive Director's Report. Director Kern.
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, members of the board, I want to let the board know that we're undergoing a federal review of our organization. The Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration will conduct a hybrid federal certification review of SBCAG from April 29th to May 1st. SBCAG serves as the federally recognized metropolitan planning organization for Santa Barbara County, and the review is required by federal law. The review will be virtual as well as in person and aims at evaluating our cooperative transportation planning and programming processes involving various stakeholders, including Caltrans, the public transportation operators, the transit operators, and the local and tribal governments in the area. This is a routine oversight that occurs every 4 years for urbanized areas exceeding 200,000. So this is the first time it's actually required. In the past, we did this voluntarily, so now it is a federal requirement. It's also mandated by the bipartisan infrastructure law. So a public listening session is scheduled for 5 p.m. on April 30th. It's either in person or virtual, so anybody can participate in that. So we're encouraging the dialogue between community and partner organizations as well as other federal agencies. The findings after this review will be included in a detailed report offering suggestions on improvements and acknowledging any of our best practices and remedial steps for any instances of non-compliance that they observe. So I just want to let the board know, and actually the public as well. We mentioned this mayor's ride, the Cyclemania Mayor's Ride. We have scheduled that for May 17th at 9:30 a.m. in Carpinteria, and taking advantage of the new Santa Claus Lane. So we want to invite any board member who would like to participate in that to come on down. We will provide bikes and or rickshaws for you to participate, so you don't actually have to ride a bike for those of you who do not ride bikes. So we already have commitment from the mayor, Al Clark, Randy Rouse, and Paula Perotti are all committed to participate, and so we'd like to see others involved as well.
Margie, who's pulling the rickshaw? That may determine whether or not I'm going to ride.
No judgment there. Anybody can ride a rickshaw or not. We are also celebrating Earth Day with free transit rides across the county. We're really pleased that several of the transit operators in the region have agreed to allow riders to ride for free on Monday, April 22nd. That includes Clean Air Express, MTD, Santa Maria Smart Transit, as well as San Ynez Valley Transit, and VCTC on their Coastal Express. So it's an eco-friendly promotion that we're trying to get the word out, so feel free to pass this along to your constituents and help improve the planet's well-being by using public transit instead of their personal vehicles. And you also heard, gosh, everybody talked about my executive director's report in their presentations. We also heard about the Olive Mill and San Ysidro roundabout ribbon cutting. This will be held in Montecito at the San Ysidro roundabout because we celebrated the groundbreaking at Olive Mill, so we're sharing the love and going to San Ysidro for the ribbon cutting at 10:30 a.m. on May 2nd. So we hope to all see you all there as well. Celebrating this milestone is always fun and exciting, and allowing folks to celebrate these accomplishments. So I really appreciate your support on that. So with that, I'll pass it back over to the chair and turn off my mic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that takes us to item 8, which is our Caltrans Director's Report.
Good morning, Chair and Directors. Brandy Ryder, Deputy District Director for Planning and Local Assistance here in District 5. I have a couple announcements. On the funding side of the House, opening up on March 19th, FHWA opened applications for the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program. This is a grant program that will focus on building networks of connected bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure improvements. Applications close on July 17th, and there's about $44 million available for that program. If you want additional information, feel free to reach out to us, and we can provide additional notice of funding information on that program. On the maintenance side of the House, you may have received a recent public release for State Route 246 between Thumbelina Drive in Buellton and Skeet Mesa Drive in Solvang. Traffic will be redirected daily from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. until Wednesday, April 24th for a pavement and grind project on the westbound lanes of 246. For upcoming events, we will be hosting a virtual public meeting on May 16th. This is for the Guadalupe CAP-M project, and that virtual meeting starts at 6 p.m. If you want additional information, feel free to reach out to me, and we can definitely get that Zoom link out. And then finally, just on the good news side of the House, we had the Alamo Pintada pedestrian bridge ribbon cutting that happened on April 16th in Los Olivos. We really want to thank Supervisor Hartman and the community for coming out to that event. It was a great event and a great way to celebrate a recent project. And I'm available for any questions should any of the directors have them.
Okay. Open it up for questions. Santa Barbara? Does anybody have questions for Caltrans? Comments? Okay. Anybody here?
This is Director Hartman. May I say something?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that that bridge is a thing of beauty. It's really an artwork. They incorporated all the original, or most of the original rocks from the bridge when it was built, I think in 1912. And they've built really lovely railings. They've got horse shoes in the pavement and leaves, and they've got tremendous interpretive signage there that describes from the Chumash to the stagecoach era to the railroads to the cars. I hope bikes in the future, but they really did an extraordinary job, and it's going to be a tremendous asset for our community. It's a place not to just connect the community, but really to linger and appreciate.
Great. Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lavanino. I just want to highlight Highway 1 on San Lucia Road, that intersection there that's on the way to Vandenberg. It continues to be a safety concern for the community of the Vandenberg Village and Lompoc Valley, as well as those commuting from the Santa Maria Valley. We're continuing to have fatalities and accidents there. And I know we've made some improvements there to try to address that, but it continues to plague that intersection. So I'm going to take the opportunity when I get a chance to talk to Caltrans to say that we need to start looking at a more permanent solution to that. It's probably going to need to be a significant one, but I think this is the time to start, especially as we're seeing some of these funding dollars. Hopefully we're going to finish paying for the stuff in the South Coast so we can start to reinvest back in the North County where lives are being lost because of the lack of investment and safety measures along some of our large corridors. So just want to highlight that for you.
Great, and I did want to respond to that. We do have a safety investigation going on at that location, and we are coordinating. Also, recently we've been meeting with the Space Force at Vandenberg to talk about a lot of their planning efforts as well, and one of our huge highlights for that corridor is safety. So that's something that we've been coordinating on with the county as well as the Space Force there.
Yeah, as part of the economic development of the North County is an investment in that, the Space Force base, and we're only going to see more traffic there over the coming years. And so, again, we should be getting ahead of that if possible.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Director Infante.
Quick question back on, pardon me. You had announced a Highway 246 pavement correction between Buellton and Skit Mesa Road. I wasn't aware of that at all. Is that going to block the entire way, or are you going to go down to one lane? What exactly is going to happen? And I'd like to put all that information in our website at the city. And I'm sure Dave King would like to have it in Buellton as well. So how do I get the information?
Yeah, we'll send you the press release. We do send the press release out to all of our city and county contacts, but we'll definitely get a copy over to you and anyone that you want us to share it with with your city. But it's going to redirect the traffic to the eastbound lane. So they'll be working on the one side,
one lane,
and then they'll be redirecting it, and it'll just be for that week. But we'll get that information over to you.
Thank you very much.
I'll also include in my Friday update this week.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much for that update. That takes us to our committee meeting updates, and I see the first one on there is Director King. I don't know if somebody has a Coast Rail Coordinating Council update if he's not here, but he's not here. We will pass on that till next month, and let's go to CalVans with Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lavanino. Everybody's favorite family, CalVans. Just a reminder that
Turn on your mic. We're not hearing.
It's on.
It's on.
You want to try it? Can you hear me yet?
Now we
Director
can.
Hartman, can you hear me? Okay. Getting back to CalVans, everybody's favorite family. Over 1 billion miles saved through CalVans over the last decade. So, and that's a billion with a B. Probably the most successful carpool program in the state of California. We had our legislative, our lobby day last week up in Sacramento. We understand that there's some challenging times for the state budget. So, getting carve-outs and the actual budget's probably a challenge, but we've been trying to direct our attention towards a potential climate bond and making sure that whatever is identified there for transportation, that CalVans would be eligible, not necessarily a carve-out, but be eligible. The problem with CalVans and our electrification plan is that we are providing a product that there is no market or that doesn't exist. We have electric vans. We're the largest owner of electric vans in the United States, if not the world. We have 8 of them, but we are on the process of having up to 800. We're the ones basically manufacturing them at this point. We're taking Ford cargo vans and we're retrofitting them, adding side airbags, taking out the combustion engine and putting electric engines and batteries below. So we're on the cutting edge of this, and so we don't often qualify because we're not light duty and we're not heavy duty. We're right there in the middle, and so we want to make sure that if there's any dollars out there at the state level on the climate action bond, that we're eligible for those funds. At this point, we've received about $60 million towards the purchase of these vans through those affordable communities, sustainable communities housing grants. We are the premier source of those projects, those housing projects, satisfying their transportation requirements. They basically call the Cal vans and try to get some vans deployed for them, and we're deploying those vans. We're quickly finding out that once we deploy them, they're not using them, and then part of our agreement is we get them back, and then we can then deploy them out to employers. It's still a challenge with our agriculture employers because these vans only do about 100 miles before they need in charge. So we're, like I said, on the cutting edge. It's a evolving business model. I suspect when we find out that electric vans are not suitable for agriculture, that we'll be looking for new users, maybe municipalities and employers that have less, smaller trips. So I'm trying to talk to my board about looking and really expanding our business model to just beyond agriculture, maybe keeping the combustion engines, that we need that reliability for agriculture. You can't have if you don't have a charging infrastructure, and just the need of reliability for not only those workers but the employer. If somebody forgets to plug it in the night before, that's devastating to many of these households. So we need a higher level of reliability that combustion offers. That said, we're still trying to solve this solution or the issues around electrification. So maybe just growing our market to other users is important. Personally, I'm going to be at the next meeting moving from the executive committee to the vice chair. The current chair, Steve McShane for Salinas, just resigned from the city council, so he'll be moving on. And Rob Poitras, supervisor from Madera County, and the chair of CalCog will now be the chair of CalVans. So we've hopefully got some people on the top of the organization that are going to help lead it into the future. So that's the CalVans update, and we probably should have an item on it in the future because I think there's a lot of things going on that are pretty dynamic. I know our county's climate action plan is starting to incorporate some of the things that we're doing with CalVans in there as well. And the great thing about CalVans is also it pays for itself. We don't take any subsidies. We actually return money back to jurisdictions because you guys get to count those miles as part of your federal reimbursement formula. So it's a big win. It's a great business model, and I'm proud to be a part of the organization. Thank you guys for letting me be on that.
Cool. Right on. All right, that takes us to 1 minute reports. We'll start in Santa Barbara. 1 minute reports. Anybody just yell out your name and.
This is
Wow,
Director
looks
Richards.
like you're all jumping.
This is Commissioner
Yes,
Richards.
Director Richards.
I'll just share that on Monday, the city of Goleta, we broke ground on the installation of our 17 EV charging stations at City Hall, and this project should be done within the next couple months, and we will be providing employee incentive a discount for our employees to charge their EVs, and of course they'll be open to the public as well. Thank you.
Very cool. All right. Anybody here? I just
Along those
will
lines,
report that effect. Oh, yeah.
We also.
That sounds like Director Williams.
Yeah, we also now, the county has solar EV chargers in Kiama that are accessible for the public and for county workers in Richardson Park. And soon to be more at the fire station.
And then some other county news is that effective April 1st, longtime Public Works Director Scott McAlpin, after 16 years heading up our organization, retired. And Scott will be missed. That's the bad news. He was the actual chair of the National Association of County Engineers, so he was really clued in to DC, helped a lot with our funding. The good news is we appointed one of his deputies, Chris Snedden, who's been at the county for 22 years. So there's no, he's coming in fully on board. There's no ramp up. He's very familiar with all the projects we're dealing with, Guadalupe, from Guadalupe all the way down to Carpinteria. So Chris has got his finger on everything. So going to be a little bit of a change. Scott's the only department head that was been there longer than I've been there, so it's kind of weird, like changing of the guard. So so that finishes 1 minute reports, and before we adjourn, we will move into closed session. So Susan, can you read us into closed session, please?
Chair and directors, today the board is agendized to discuss 2 items in closed session. The first item is the executive director performance evaluation under Government Code 54956 7B1. The second item is conference with labor negotiators under Government Code 54957.6A. The employee is the executive director. The agency designated representatives are Chair Lavanino and myself, Susan McKenzie. And prior to recessing, if we can just make sure that there's no public comment. And I think I anticipate 20 minutes.
Yeah, probably.
Chair Lavanino and Susan McKenzie, there's no public comment.
Okay, so let's cross our fingers that we can get both of our conference rooms to talk to each other, and we will be back in 20 minutes or so. I think she got here late for something that we probably already passed, I imagine.
Oh, there was the airport land. Okay.
Santa Barbara, you back in the
Yeah.
chambers?
We are.
She's got somebody she,
Except Dawson.
yeah. All right, welcome back. And we're coming back out of closed session. Susan, can you read us out?
Chair and directors, today the board met in closed session to discuss 2 items, the executive director performance evaluation and labor negotiations, and the board took no reportable actions.
Okay. All right, sounds awesome. All right, so we are adjourned. I don't know when our next meeting is. May 16th? All right, we'll see you May 16th in Santa Barbara.